Hi, my name is Laura, and welcome to my podcast, Why the Book Wins, where I compare books with their movie adaptations, and through these discussions, you will hear why 9 times out of 10, the book wins. I'll also share different behind-the-scenes trivia I've discovered in my research, which by learning makes the story all the more interesting. If you love either books, movies, or both, this is the perfect podcast for you. This probably already goes without saying, but there will be spoilers for both the book and the movie in this podcast. So if you plan on reading the book or watching the movie, go do that first, and then come back and listen to this. And now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi, thanks for joining me today. We are talking about Blackkklansman, which the book, the full title is Blackkklansman, Race, Hate, and an Undercover Investigation of a Lifetime by Ron Stallworth, published in 2014. And then the movie, Blackkklansman, was directed by Spike Lee and released in 2018. The synopsis, so we have Ron Stallworth. He is the first black cop in Colorado Springs. While working intel, he sees an ad for the KKK, which is starting a new group in Colorado Springs. Stallworth reaches out, not thinking it's a real ad, but turns out it is legitimate, and he gets a call from the local Klan leader, and the guy wants to meet Stallworth. Stallworth, however, is black, so he can't actually go meet this guy and claim he wants to be a member. So he has a fellow cop, intel cop guy, named Chuck. He has him pose as him, and Chuck will meet with the Klan leader in person. So Stallworth builds the strong relationship with the local Klan leader as well as the leader of the entire Klan, named David Duke, by talking to them often on the phone. Chuck, meanwhile, will appear in person when necessary, and Chuck eventually does become an official member of the KKK under the name Ron Stallworth. And during this 3-ish month undercover investigation, they're able to get names of men in high-ranking positions who are secretly members. They stop cross burnings, and they prevent riots and other such things. In the end, the investigation has to end because the local leader has to leave, and he's really pushing Ron to be the new leader. And Ron/Chuck can't do that, and so they simply stop answering the calls and change their phone number. So my thoughts on the book. I have the same complaint a lot of reviewers of this book have, and that is its poor writing. I did not find it boring. Some people said it was boring, but for me, it just wasn't quite as captivating as it could have been. And he was also repetitive about things that didn't really even matter much. And the story itself wasn't as exciting as I thought it would have. This is, of course, a crazy story, but it's not like Stallworth himself snuck into the KKK. It was his white friend, Chuck. The card saying he was a member of the Klan may have been in his name, but it was Chuck who actually went through the ceremony, you know? Stallworth was in charge of the investigation, though, and he did talk regularly on the phone with the various KKK members, including, of course, David Duke. And it is funny because when he would talk to them on the phone, David Duke especially could say that he could tell whether he was talking to a white man or a black man, and he explained how he could tell. And, I mean, like, he's so full of it because he was talking to a black guy telling him this. The story is a bit anticlimactic, but I suppose that's not Stallworth's fault. Like, he didn't embellish the truth, and I like that, and he simply told the story as it is. And in the book, he says, "I've often been asked, what did you really accomplish over the course of this investigation without arresting any Klan members or seizing any illegal contraband? Or what are you most proud of where this investigation was concerned?" My answer is always in this fashion. As a result of our combined effort, no parent of a black or other minority child, or any child for that matter, had to explain why an 18-foot cross was seen burning at this or that location, especially those individuals from the South who, perhaps as children, had experienced the terrorist act of a Klan cross burning. No child in the city limits of Colorado Springs ever had to experience firsthand the fear brought on by this act of terror. We prevented them from having such an incident burned into their consciousness as many of their parents might have been imprinted as children. I knew firsthand from direct dealings via my undercover phone conversations with Ken, the local Klan leader, when and where those acts of terror were being planned, and we in the police department were able to put a stop to them. Success in a police investigation does not always rest on how many arrests are made or how much illegal contraband is seized. Success often lies not in what happens, but in what you prevent from happening. So on to the movie. This movie was directed by the famous director Spike Lee, which I often get Spike Lee and Spike Jonze confused, but Spike Lee is black and Spike Jonze is white, among other differences, but they're both really good directors. Anyway, Spike Lee directed this movie, and he has also directed movies such as Malcolm X, starring Denzel Washington, Do the Right Thing, Inside Man, and 25th Hour. In this movie, he does a really good job, especially with mixing in comedic relief and with the seriousness of the topic. In the acting, we have John David Washington, who is the son of Denzel Washington, and he plays Ron Stallworth, and this was actually his first leading role, and he's really good. Adam Driver plays the cop who goes undercover as Ron Stallworth. I first heard of Driver back in 2013 when I watched the TV show Girls. He's a character in that show, and he has since been in a number of award-winning movies and blockbuster films like Star Wars, and he's wonderful in this and has great chemistry with Washington. Topher Grace portrays David Duke, and you will recognize him from that 70s show where he plays Eric. And when he got this role, he was told he could not tell anyone that he was playing Duke. And while researching the role, he noticed how despite being a terrible person and incredibly racist, Duke was capable of coming off as charming and this likable guy, and so Grace tried to convey that. In the book, Stallworth often refers to Duke as a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because he's able to present this likable front when once he's, amongst his clan members or talking to Ron on the phone, it shows this whole other side of him. Laura Harrier plays Patrice, the woman who is the president of the Black Student Union and Stallworth's love interest. I've never seen her in anything before, but she's great in this. So there are three big differences, I think, between the book and film, and I'll start with the face of Ron Stallworth. So in the book, the fellow agent, Ron gets to play him as a guy named Chuck. In the movie, they have him be a guy named Flip. So in the movie, it seems Flip has more involvement and met with the clan fairly regularly, and he was also Jewish. And the movie really plays this part up, having one of the clan members, Felix, be very suspicious of Flip, and he wants him to take a lie detector test to prove he isn't Jewish. Adding this element to the movie helped it be more suspenseful and helped us feel that Flip had more skin in the game. In the movie, there's a line where he says, "I'm Jewish, but I wasn't raised to be. It wasn't part of my life. I never thought much about being Jewish. Nobody around me was Jewish. I wasn't going to a bunch of bat mitzvahs. I didn't even have a bat mitzvah. I was just another white kid. And now I'm in some basement denying it out loud. I never thought much about it. Now I'm thinking about it all the time. About rituals and heritage. Is that passing? Well then, I've been passing." In the movie, Felix investigates Ron, and near the end of the movie, he has the whole thing figured out, connecting Ron with Flip. However, things are wrapped up before Felix can call them out on it. In the book, not too much is said about Chuck, but he wasn't Jewish. And in the book, Ron talks about how dumb the KKK members were, at least the ones he talked to. And the local chapter leader and the others in the group never suspected anything, and they were never suspicious of Chuck. They also have another cop in the book named Jimmy go undercover as a new recruit Chuck is bringing into the clan. So the movie doesn't have that part. And the movie also just added the whole Felix storyline to make it more interesting, as well as the aspect of Flip being Jewish. But I did like the movie, how we saw things from Flip's perspective. I kind of wish in the book that Ron would have reached out to Chuck and gotten his side of the story. It would have added another element there. So another change is with Patrice. So in the movie, the president of the Black Student Union is a woman named Patrice. She and Ron start a romance, and she is also a KKK target because she's, of course, very outspoken about her views. During the early stages of their relationship, she suspects he's a cop, but he denies it. However, later he tells her that he is, in fact, an undercover agent, and she's upset that he lied and upset that he's a cop. In the end of the movie, she asks him about resigning, but he doesn't want to resign because he likes being a police officer. And the ending is ambiguous, but it sort of makes it seem like they stay together, but you don't really know. And in the book, there is no romance talked about. There is no Patrice in the book. When he's at the Stokely Carmichael speech, he does meet a woman there, and she's German, and she's flirting with him. However, nothing happens between the two because he mentions that he had started dating some woman who he knew he wanted to get serious about, but we never meet this girlfriend of his. And as far as the Black Student Union, in the book, he mentions that as well as other anti-racist groups. However, he says that they were all poorly organized and didn't have the local influential leaders who could really draw a crowd. So these groups were trying to, protest the KKK coming in Colorado Springs, but they just weren't well organized. So as I said, the book doesn't really have much action, The movie wants to be more exciting, though, so they had Felix and some others plan a bombing when the Black Student Union gathers. And Felix's wife ends up putting a bomb on Patrice's car, but no one ends up being injured. Though Felix's wife does end up in jail. I don't remember if Felix gets arrested too, but in the book, because of their investigation, they're able to stop cross burnings from taking place, but there's never a bombing. Though the movie and the book do have a Klan member who talks about wanting to blow a place up, and then later there's a raid or something and explosives are found. And Klan members also have classes on tax evasion, which is also illegal. But yeah, nothing quite like the climax of the movie. The movie also adds in more about racist cops. There is one cop in particular who harasses Patrice and others, and in the end they catch him in a mic saying how he could kill Ron if he wanted to and he wouldn't get in trouble. And so because he's caught saying this, he's put in prison. When Ron is trying to arrest the woman with the bomb, cops pull up and immediately arrest Ron and think that he's the bad guy rather than the woman. And they don't believe it when he says that he's the cop, and they don't even give him the chance for him to show them his badge. The movie also ends with footage of the 2017 neo-Nazi riots that happened in Virginia. And it also has footage of Trump commenting on the whole thing when he said, you got a group on one side that was bad, and you got a group on the other side that was also very violent. Not all those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all those people were white supremacists. You also had a lot of people that were fine people. And then it's followed that with a clip of David Duke in 2017 talking positively about Trump. Speaking of David Duke, in both, the real Ron forms a close friendship of sorts with David Duke over the phone. They talk often, and the movie shows those conversations, including showing how Ron and the other cops got such a kick out of it and were laughing when they were talking to him, just the ridiculousness of the situation. In the movie, he has one last conversation with Duke in the end where he reveals who he really is. However, in real life, Duke didn't know the real identity of Ron Stallworth until 2006, nearly 30 years later. And Stallworth has said that he regrets not coming forward with what happened at the time because maybe it would have hindered Duke's political career. Both book and movie show how Ron was assigned to be Duke's bodyguard while he was in town. Also in both, Ron gets a photo with his arms around Duke and another Klansman. And after the picture is taken, Duke tries to take the picture, the Polaroid, because he doesn't want a photo floating around of him looking chummy with a black guy. And Ron says that if he touches him, he will arrest him for assaulting a police officer. And so it's very satisfying to see Duke put in his place like that. In the book, Ron says that over the years, the photo has been lost, which is such a disappointment. He still had a lot of the other documents from this investigation, but for some reason that photo in particular, he no longer has. In a more recent interview, Ron revealed that to this day, he still keeps his KKK membership card in his wallet. So in both, we see that the local chapter leader wants Ron to be the new leader. And in the book, it's because the current leader is in the military and he's being reassigned. In the book, it is explained that this put Ron and Chuck in a tough spot because being a leader, you have to make a lot of decisions and they would get in trouble for entrapment. And so entrapment is when a cop is undercover and he convinces the criminals to do an illegal act. But then when they're charged for it, they can just blame it on the cop, saying that they wouldn't have done it had he not convinced them to. And as a KKK member, Chuck/Ron could remain more neutral and never make suggestions on what the Klan should or shouldn't do. But as the leader, they expect you to decide those things. And so he explains it in the book saying, it would have been quite easy for me or Chuck to manipulate conversations that would have guaranteed they would commit criminal acts, this allowing for their arrest and prosecution. Instead, we steered or tried to such conversations away from acts of conflict, which proved beneficial to our objective of intelligence gathering and still provided for the public safety and welfare. So in the end, the local leader is really pushing Ron to take the spot, but Ron's police captain says that they can't risk it. And in both the book and the movie, he tells them that they're ending the assignment and he needs to get rid of all the evidence and reports. And in both, he shreds something when a guy is around, but when he's alone, he takes the papers and he leaves so that he can hold on to the evidence. And then when Ron is working in the records room in the beginning, the movie shows an older white guy looking at a magazine with Sybil Shepherd and saying how she's attractive, and it just kind of ends at that. But in the book, he talks about an older guy he was working with, and the two of them would talk about various female celebrities that they found attractive. And then Ron mentions an African-American woman in the book, and it says that the guy responds with, "I don't know how you people define beauty in a woman." And then Ron writes, "He said this very casually without intended overt malice. I was dumbfounded, to say the least. This nice elderly man had unknowingly and unintentionally slapped me in the face with this statement." And this seems worse in some ways than someone saying something blatantly racist. If he had called this guy out on having said that, the guy probably would have claimed that, like, oh, I'm not racist, like, you're just being too sensitive or something like that. And these are referred to as microaggressions when someone says something so hurtful about your race, but they're too ignorant and insensitive or in denial to realize how hurtful and racist the comment was. So at least the KKK members acknowledged that they're racist. I don't know. Maybe it's not any better, but anyway. And both were shown in his cop interview too, how they tell him he needs to be prepared for racist comments said to him, not only by civilians he has to interact with, but also his own fellow cops. Which is crazy because rather than punish other cops for saying racist remarks, they just tell Ron that he needs to learn to turn the other cheek. And so the book talks a bit about the origins of the KKK, specifically why they dress up in robes and why they would even put robes on their horses. And so it's because after the Civil War, men from the South gathered and would dress up pretending to be ghosts to scare the former slaves. And this was taken even further, and they would kill African Americans and burn their homes and other such things. And also at this point, the KKK weren't anti-Semitic, and so there were Jewish people that were part of the Klan in that early stage. But at some point, the Klan kind of disbanded. But then in 1915, D.W. Griffith released his film epic, The Birth of a Nation, which was about the Civil War, and made the Ku Klux Klan members look like heroes and was incredibly racist towards black people. The movie also had the KKK members burning crosses, which they previously hadn't done. So this film started the second era of the KKK, and in the mid-1920s to 1930s, it had the highest member rate it's ever had, and they started burning crosses because that's what was done in the movie. And this movie became a big part of the Klan, and like in the movie, it shows that when they gather together, they watch Birth of a Nation because it's become such a part of the KKK. But the Klan did once again disband in 1944, I'm assuming in part due to World War II. But it did start up again just a couple years later, and even though it didn't have as many numbers as it once did, any number of members is still too many. David Duke became the leader of the Klan in 1976, which, by the way, they have the silliest names for different levels within the Klan. Like, the leader of the whole thing is called the Grand Wizard, and guys in charge of local chapters are called Grand Dragons, and there is even a level called Exalted Cyclops. But anyway, Duke, as the book and movie say, gave the Klan a new face. He was clean cut and well dressed, and he never said the N-word in public, though of course he would say it plenty when he was around his Klan buddies. And he was just more in the public eye and trying to give the KKK a better name. And as Ron says in the book, in essence, he mainstreamed the Klan, making it seem an acceptable and viable alternative for those looking for means to express their displeasure with the status quo of their lives and government representatives. And he even ran for office, including president, multiple times. And eventually he did win as state representative for Louisiana. In the book, when he talks about the local leader, Ron says that he learned, the goal was to get Klansmen elected to political offices at all levels of government throughout Colorado. If they could not find qualified Klansmen to run for office, we will also support non-Klansmen who share our philosophy. If a candidate wants our public endorsement, we'll give it to him, or we'll support him with financial aid. The important thing is to get the right kind of thinking into government. As we saw at the end of the movie, the Klan is still, unfortunately, alive and well, as is David Duke. Trump may not be an actual member, but he certainly had a racist agenda. In the book, Ron says how Klan members wanted to have Klan members going back and forth along the Mexico border to prevent immigrants from getting in. And of course, the wall along Mexico was a huge thing when Trump was running for office. And it was so upsetting what he said after those Virginia riots. I haven't gotten political on here before, but in general, I dislike all politicians. But it was just so ridiculous that Trump ever became president, and I am glad he is no longer in office. So the book or movie, this one is kind of tough because I found the movie more entertaining and intriguing, yet it doesn't stay close to the truth of what actually happened. If this was based on fiction, it wouldn't bother me so much that they changed some bigger elements, if making those changes made for a better story. But we all know that when a movie starts with based on a true story, to take that with a grain of salt. Truth can be stranger than fiction at times, but apparently it still needs some embellishments. I guess even with the departure from the true story, I would still pick the movie because it's more entertaining. And it has amazing acting, and Spike Lee does a great job. Just be aware that it's only based on a true story and that it veers away from what actually happened quite a bit. But the movie is very timely when it was released, and even though it was depressing seeing the racist riots that are happening today, I like that Lee chose to make that correlation and include that along with showcasing the racist cops, but while also showing that there's decent cops out there too. And speaking of the news footage, there's a line in the book which says, "The media all too unwittingly creates the very news it reports because of its zeal to get a story. This only benefits the person or subject being covered and gives them or it a power neither deserves." And so he says this when he witnesses a news reporter hanging out at an anti-Klan rally, and a Klan member walks up and asks if they want an interview, and they say yes. And so he puts on his robes and he's interviewed, and he's given this screen time that he shouldn't be given, but the news reporters are doing it anyway because they want a story. But like I said, the movie is more entertaining, so part of me would lean towards that. But I don't know. I did go into this movie being so ready to love it, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. So it is more entertaining from the book, and they add more suspense. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's, become my new favorite movie or something. And the book, even though it may not be the greatest writing, it is a quick read, and it is really interesting, and it is true. And he doesn't, like I said, I like that he doesn't embellish things, and he's very straightforward about it. Like, I think my biggest complaint, I made complaints about the book earlier, but I also wish he would have gotten things from Chuck's perspective too. I think that would have helped, and that's a huge benefit to the movie, is that you see both of their perspectives with the whole thing. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I would recommend both. Like, if you watch the movie, then it's worth reading the book too, I guess, so you can know the true story. If you read the book, then I would assume you would be interested in watching the movie too, just out of curiosity. But I don't know. If you've already seen the movie and listened to this podcast, then I've already told you the differences anyway and told you what really happened. So maybe the book isn't necessary. But anyway, I guess that wraps it up for Blackkklansman. Join me next week for We Were Soldiers, which is a movie with Mel Gibson based on the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young about the Vietnam War. And this will be an extra special episode because I will have a guest. So it'll be, for the first time ever, I'll have someone else on here. So tune in for that one. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, head over to my site, whythebookwins.com. You can leave a comment there and I will be sure to reply. You can also find me on Instagram under the same name, Why the Book Wins, and you can message me there, and don't forget to follow. And also don't forget to subscribe to my podcast and join me next Wednesday for the newest episode of Why the Book Wins.